And Kristen Getzlaff from Inspired Life Wellness break it all down for us. Today we're talking about a new study that shows the correlation between visceral fat and Alzheimer's disease. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies. It's so nice to have you back.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So today we're a study that links visceral fat with Alzheimer's disease. So maybe, Chris, do you just want to walk me through the difference between visceral fat and another type of fat?
Yeah, well, visceral fat is the fat that wraps around your organs. So it's going to be that belly fat. The other is subcutaneous fat. That's the stuff that you pinch, okay? One of the ways to kind of tell if you might have more visceral fat than anything else is if you were invited to play Santa Claus this year, if you've got the pot belly,
okay.
right? Or if you've got more of the apple shape than the pear shape.
Okay.
Big bonus, though, is that visceral fat is easier to lose than sub-Q fat because it metabolizes more quickly.
Okay, all right. So Kristen, tell me about this correlation between Alzheimer's and visceral fat. What are they finding and how did they find it?
So they found a couple of different things. So we look at visceral fat, it just affects metabolism, and we're also seeing that Alzheimer's may be a metabolic disease. The studies are still out there, and they're still looking at it, but so it metabolizes
The amyloids.
Sorry, amyloids.
Yeah,
that's
amyloid
the word I'm
plaques.
looking for. So, yep, and so it makes that more difficult. It can actually impact the blood flow to the brain.
Okay.
Which doesn't seem like there's a correlation, but they're finding that there is.
Interesting.
So,
Yes. Well, it's that blood flow to the brain that causes those amyloid plaques to start to form in the brain because you don't remove the amyloid proteins from the brain. Amyloid is a naturally occurring protein in the brain.
And that's, so you don't want that in your brain.
Well, it's in your brain. We don't want it to be dysfunctional and build up into those plaques.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so that lack of blood flow prevents that from leaving that brain area, which causes the deterioration in the brain. And then we have the tau proteins that start to tangle up and cause problems then too.
So what I was reading is that the signs can show up like 20 years earlier than symptoms start. So what does that tell us?
Well, what that tells us is if we can connect visceral fat to Alzheimer's disease or to the potential for Alzheimer's disease down the road, we can start using some of those preventative measures to kind of guide people in, keep the visceral fat down. We might be able to keep that blood flow open into the brain area and do that. A big part of it is its effect on insulin resistance and preventing insulin resistance that goes along with diabetes and things like that.
All right, very interesting. And so, Kristen, it kind of matters when you get your when the visceral fat starts to build. They're saying midlife is when they're seeing that this really becomes a problem.
right, and especially for men who are already at risk for Alzheimer's disease, that visceral fat in midlife, 35, 40 to 55 or 60, that definitely increases the risk. Although for women, there still is an increased risk with that visceral fat.
So if you're already in that age range and you think, okay, this sounds like me, is it too late to start losing that? Has the destruction already begun, or is it time to start eating right and exercising?
That's exactly it. Yep,
Right,
yep.
I
Always
did it.
diet and
Diet
exercise.
and exercise is probably the answer to everything.
That is
really
an
is.
interesting. I feel like that's becoming a lot more common. The answer that we're seeing in a lot of these studies is movement, and it doesn't have to be intense exercise. It can just be, adding in a walk every day.
Exactly. And even when we talk about the movement, and if you don't like going to the gym for an hour a day, if you don't have the time for that, it is the 10-minute walks 3 or 4 times during the day. And the physical functional things we do during the day that are movement. We have so many convenience things that just getting down on the floor and scrubbing your floor by hand is movement and will help those kind of things.
I'm not doing
keep
that.
us healthy.
I'm keeping my Swiffer.
Sorry.
but it'll work.
But it's those kind of things.
But yeah, it doesn't have to be, like you said, it doesn't need to be an intense regimen. It doesn't need to be anything too formal. It can just be making sure that you're up and moving, and whether it's walking or cleaning or gardening, whatever you like to do is where you can find that exercise and those extra steps.
Right.
All right. So Chris, is there anything else we should know about this study that we can take into our daily lives, especially as we head into the holiday season surrounded by treats and sweets?
Diet and exercise first. Secondly, studies are always coming out. There's lots of things that we're finding. We are never going to stop researching Alzheimer's disease because it is a horrible, horrible disease to have to go through or watch someone go through. And so we're always looking for new ways to treat it.
Absolutely. Yep, there's always a study going on, which is so great to see because, like you said, it's a tough disease to live through and to watch.
Yes.
All right, so we have some information up on the screen where we can get in touch with you. Ladies, thank you so much, and I'm excited to have you back again and continue our conversation.
Well, thank you.
so much.
Yes, all right, it was nice.